Good morning. Welcome to today's Roundtable. In the past 2 weeks, Leader Kevin McCarthy has been leading great discussions about policies that House Democrats are pushing on the American people in their tax and spend socialist reconciliation package. This bill will impact honest, hardworking Americans in very negative ways. This bill makes it more expensive to heat your home, to fill up your car with gas, or turn on lights. And as we are discussing today, it will drastically increase the cost of sending children to preschool and take away parental power when it comes to education and put it in the hands of the federal government. We know that that is not a message that resonates with America. Virginia spoke loud and clear last night that parental rights is an issue that we can run on and we can win on when it comes to education, and Republicans are committed to always standing up for our parents and students. I want to give each member of this roundtable an opportunity to introduce themselves, and then we look forward to hearing from you and kicking off this discussion. So why don't we start with you, Ranking Member Foxx, to introduce yourself.
I am Virginia Foxx. I represent the 5th District of North Carolina, which goes the mountains, basically, of North Carolina, and I am the lead Republican on the Education and Labor Committee.
Burgess Owens, Utah, 4th District. I'm on the ranking member for subcommittee pre-K through 12, and very excited about this particular conversation. It's a passion of mine, and I'm looking forward to making a difference with everybody here, for sure.
I'm Jenny Gentles. I'm listed here as an advocate for school choice. I currently work with organizations like American Federation for Children and the Independent Women's Forum.
Nikki Neely, I'm the president and founder of Parents Defending Education.
I'm Brandon Michon. I'm a father of 4 of Loudoun County, just a father who cares about children's education.
Good morning, I'm Julia Letlow. I'm from Louisiana, representing the 5th District, 24 parishes in all. I am a single mom of 2 beautiful children, Jeremiah 4, Jacqueline 2, and I serve on Education and Labor and Ag Committee. Excited to be here.
Great. Well, what an exciting day to host this roundtable. Last night, the parents of Virginia stood up and spoke loud and clear. Glenn Youngkin ran on education, and he won on education. Education is a uniting issue for Republicans, and we have the answers parents are looking for. This past year and a half, as we've faced the COVID pandemic, we have seen an unprecedented window into our children's education across the country. So it's no surprise that we have seen an uptick in parental education. Parents are right to be concerned when they see their kids taught radical ideologies, forced to remain masked and distanced from their peers, or exposed to inappropriate instructional materials. Yet, as parents expressed their very real concerns about their children's education, the Biden administration took unconscionable action to silence parents by trying to mobilize the FBI to intervene at school board meetings. Absolutely disgraceful. Education Secretary Cardona even refused to accept that parents should be the primary stakeholders in determining educational programming for their kids. Today's Democratic Party believes that government knows better than parents when it comes to what is right for their kids. This belief is way out of touch with the values and experiences of families across America, and we saw that clearly in Virginia last night. The Democrats' reconciliation bill, their far-left socialist tax and spending spree, doubles down with a drastic expansion of federal control of education with their proposal to nationalize America's elementary schools. It gives the Biden administration complete control to approve the early education standards being taught to 3 to 4-year-olds, including standards relating to children's social and emotional development. Their bill places no limit on what additional requirements the Biden administration can impose to further dictate how states must run their preschools and K-12 schools. Make no mistake, the Democrats' bill takes away choices from parents on how, where, and what they want their kids to learn. It also limits preschool options to those that will take direction from the Biden administration on what to teach. Family and faith-based educational providers serve as a cornerstone of the early child education options in many communities, including in my district in New York's North Country. Yet they have little place in the proposal from the Democrats, where the government, not families, decide what programs qualify to educate young children. Now that parents have seen firsthand what takes place in classrooms when Democrats are in charge, no one should blame parents for not wanting the same schools solely responsible for the safety and education of their 3-year-old children. And what's more, a recent analysis of the child care subsidies in the Democrats' bill will spike the cost of child care for middle-class families by $13,000. This will incentivize working parents out of a job to be able to afford to care for their children. Republicans will protect parental rights. We will always stand up for parental rights when it comes to our education system. I wanted to turn it over to Ranking Member Virginia Foxx for her statement.
Thank you, Congresswoman Stefanik. You know, this spending bill, as Congresswoman Stefanik outlined, is very, very bad for education and very, very bad for students and parents. I was on the school board for 12 years. We didn't act like the Loudoun County School Board does and dismiss parents. We paid attention to them. This spending bill gives federal control of education. It gives the government federal control of education. Less parental choice, more power to the unions. And again, the Virginia election, I think, spoke very loudly to this. If you have a federal takeover of education, what you're going to have is drag queen story hour instead of Madeline. You're going to have thanks-taking, not Thanksgiving. You're going to have the Pledge of Allegiance to the progressive flag, not the American flag. The parents don't want to pick up many social justice warriors at the end of the day. They want children who can read, write, and add. They do not want CRT. The federal government has weaponized the DOJ against parents, as Congresswoman Stefanik has said. But we know that parents like Mr. Michon and others are brave, and they're not going to be intimidated by what the federal government is doing. What we have to do is work more closely together to fight harder for school choice and local control of education. Thank you.
Representative
Thank you, Chairwoman Stefanik. I sincerely appreciate the opportunity to participate in this important discussion about education. This topic is near and dear to my heart, first and foremost as a parent, but also as a former educator and a concerned American. Statistics consistently show that my home state of Louisiana has some of the worst educational outcomes in the nation. Our 2021 data tells us that more than half, 50% of our current third graders are not able to meet their reading benchmarks. This number is incredibly troubling when studies show that students who aren't proficient readers by the third grade are 4 times as likely not to graduate from high school. Seeing a student drop out and not realize their full potential is the most disappointing outcome of all. While we face tremendous challenges in education, the other side's proposed solutions of creating more bureaucracy and pouring more money into failing schools is not the answer. As Republicans, we believe that education is a true partnership between a family and the learning environment that works best for their child. We need to work to expand opportunity and choice so that students can find that school that can set them on the path to success. In addition, parents should be able to choose a curriculum for their child that fits with their values and their beliefs, and not have one forced on them or fear indoctrination by a federal agenda. They should be able to voice their concerns in an open forum without fear of political prosecution. I recently had the opportunity to visit an IDEA charter school in Louisiana that is helping disadvantaged students achieve their dreams. For 15 years, IDEA has graduated 100% of their students and sent them to college. That's no small feat in a state where only 32% of adults have a post-secondary degree. This is possible because they've created a unique, structured curriculum for their students, not a one-size-fits-all plan. I truly believe that the best path out of poverty is through education. I can't begin to tell you how inspired I was standing there in that school and seeing those students working tirelessly towards a brighter future for them and for their families. I think the problems we have with the reconciliation bill's education provisions are indicative of many of the larger issues in the legislation. The other side wants to shut parents out and have the government do the job. That has proven to fail time and time again. We believe that the best way to improve education is through schools working hand in hand with families, bringing in new ideas and innovations to the table that will always put our students first. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Owens.
Thank you. I'm first of all very excited about this conversation. I want to thank Virginia for standing strong, for parents for bringing this topic to the front, at the forefront as it needed to be for a long time. And I want to congratulate America because we're now waking up. And that's I've always believed that once we wake up, game over. So I have a little different perspective, and I'm thankful to have been raised in a community in the 60s, the days of KKK, Jim Crow, and segregation, but a community just like all others across our country that believed in education. It didn't matter what the culture was, even though we were not assimilating, we knew that education was our way out. And of all the races out there, the black community was all in. At that time in the 1960s, we led the country in terms of men matriculating from college. My dad was a college educator for 40 years. My mom was a junior high school teacher. Education was everything. And because of that community that I grew up in, we believed in the American dream. And even though they had obstacles, we never doubted the fact that we could achieve anything we wanted to in this great country. And that's what we need to get back to. And what we're now realizing over the last few decades is that we've been under attack. Our kids have been under attack. I've seen it in my community as we saw that flipping of a great community that led our country to growth of the middle class, men matriculating from college, men committed to marriage, and percentage of entrepreneurs. I've seen that flip over to where we now have in the state of California, 75% of black boys in the state of California cannot pass standard reading and writing tests. 13 schools in Baltimore have zero proficiency in math. You take the idea of thinking away from our kids, our future is very, very dim and grim. I've also believed very much in the American way and American people. And I know that once we come together on anything, we the people, there's nothing's going to stop us. Even though taking away the harmony in our sports and all the other things that kind of has always brought us together, one thing they cannot take away is the power of we the people. And a little common sense, a little wisdom that I learned when I was a young kid, you just don't mess with Mama Bear. And they kind of let that one get past them for some reason. So I'm so excited the fact that the parents in 2020, of all the bad things that did happen, the misery we had to go through, the light that came out of it as we had a chance to see our future and what was happening to it. And we're now standing up saying we're not going to let that happen. So I'm excited about where we are today. I want to thank again America for, congratulate America for what we now saw last night. And we're going to start talking even more, no matter what side of the aisle we're on. One thing we have in common, we want our future to be great and our kids to be a big part of that, and we're going to get that done. So thank you so much. I appreciate this, Lisa.
Great. I'll go to Mr. Brandon Michon, who's a Loudoun County parent.
Thank you. Give you guys a little bit of background about me. I'm not an elected official. I don't work for any organization. Back in January, there was a lady, Alicia Andrews, who tweeted a video of me going viral, fussing, passionately speaking to my school board. And it's funny, I have my oldest son, Duke, right behind me. He spoke actually right before me, and we moved down here from New York. We're natives of Loudoun. We moved down here summer of last year. And we're speaking at our school board about opening schools and school choice and the ability for families to either be in person or online. And he spoke before me and said, hey, I just want to be in class and meet friends. And you sit there and you listen to school board members who look down at their phone, they don't acknowledge the youth. And it brought a passion out in me that came out, and that passion of raising the bar and accountability of our elected officials has created a parents movement, I think, within the United States. And for whatever reason, that video of mine resonated, but I think we saw it yesterday. Glenn Youngkin ran on a campaign of education in Virginia, and I think Virginians set a roadmap for education and parent involvement in the future. And I say that because, as Representative Owens said, all parents, and I say this, all parents can care about the education of their children. And I've been very vocal about this, and I know we have a lot of people from one side of the aisle here versus others, but Republicans, Democrats, Independents, I don't care about your religious faith, I don't care about your sexual orientation. We all care about children's education, and that's what has transcended the political divide in Virginia, and those who are on the fence who were conflicted with issues that have been in discussion for decades, gun control, you name it. They said, you know what, education of my children is more important, and these topics are more important. So, my involvement here and my passion to see my children succeed, like Member Foxx said, all we want to see is the best. And if we can't raise the bar on their education for our children, then we're holding them back from the future. And one of the things I just want to note is there is a huge push, and I went to college. I was blessed with the somewhat of an athletic ability. I played college sports, and that helped me get into a good institution for learning. But there has been a lack of focus on trades and other avenues for creating wealth and stability for families, and not everyone is supposed to be a college professor. And you look at starting salaries for plumbers, and I told people last night, not to divert on topic here, but I told people last night that no matter where technology leads us, people still need running water, electricity, and plumbing. And I've paid some bills of those lately, and they're not super cheap. So anyways, I appreciate the opportunity to be here, but again, parents matter. This has become a movement. And this movement goes beyond yesterday's election. This is going to be something that will continue to create waves throughout the country.
That's great, and thank you so much for bringing your son, Duke. We will next go to Ginny Gentles.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here, and I thank my fellow Northern Virginia parents for all they're doing to fight back against school boards who have been unresponsive to the needs of parents. I appreciate the opportunity to share my perspective on parents' rights and the bill's plans to expand centralized government control by creating a unionized pre-K entitlement and crushing the existing parent-driven child care delivery system. As a parent of school-age children and a school choice advocate, I strongly believe that legislators should empower parents and develop policies that allow a wide variety of child care and education options to flourish. So many parents around the country, as we saw so clearly yesterday, many parents in Virginia are frustrated with their K-12 public schools. In Northern Virginia, where I live, we experienced over a year of closed schools, disastrous remote learning, misspent emergency federal funding, refusal to meet the needs of children with disabilities, lowered academic standards, and classrooms focused on woke agendas rather than addressing learning loss and essential academic instruction. We're fed up. Parents should be concerned that this plan intends to expand this inflexible and unresponsive public school system down to the child care providers and preschools that serve children under 5. Why would we want to expand such a failed model? The plans appear to place the federal government in charge of what kids learn and who gets to care for them. That's not what parents want right now. And they certainly don't want dramatic increase in costs of child care and crowding out of family-based and other more flexible child care arrangements. If you funnel children into federally regulated universal preschool system, that's going to result in a union-driven disruption similar to those that we have endured during K-12 teacher strikes and also COVID-era school closures. We don't want the disruptions that we've had in K-12 in preschool as well. So in an era where polls and parent actions are revealing that families want a variety of education options, it seems tone deaf to propose investing massive amounts of government support for centralized childcare and preschools. What we see right now are a historically large number of families leaving a centralized public school, traditional government-assigned school system. Traditional public school enrollment decreased by over 3% last year. That might not sound like a lot, just 3%, but it's 1.5 million students. And homeschooling increased. It went up to 11% of the school-age population, and this is real homeschooling, not just Zoom oversight of remote learning. Public charter school enrollment increased by 7.1%. With ongoing frustrations with overzealous quarantine policies, and those are out there still, mask mandates, sexually explicit books in school libraries, and lessons focused on CRT and gender ideology, this exodus likely will continue. So perhaps it's understandable that unions are seeking to expand their membership by expanding their ranks down to preschool teachers. If students are leaving the traditional public school, they're going to need to unionize down to preschool to keep up their membership numbers. Teachers' unions strive to expand their political power, but the pandemic proved that union-centered providers will fail parents and students. So thankfully, I have the good news, and we can all celebrate together yesterday's election, but also we can celebrate the 2021 state legislative sessions, where state legislators recognized the soaring demand for educational options, and they expanded or created new school choice programs in 21 states. This is likely to continue throughout the nation as we get ready for the 2022 state legislative sessions, and that's good news. School choice policies empower parents rather than distant bureaucrats to direct their children's education. They also send a wake-up call to districts. Serve students well, or students will leave. So these state legislators paid attention to polling data. Polling is through the roof in support for school choice, and they paid attention to 20 years of research, which have shown that school choice produces higher graduation and college enrollment rates, lower crime rates, higher parent satisfaction, and higher academic achievement in surrounding public schools. All good news. Congress should prioritize families over unions and bureaucrats. I think we all agree that families should have the freedom to pursue childcare, preschool, and K-12 education options that are best suited to their children's needs. Thanks again for the opportunity to talk with you all today.
Thank you. We'll now go to Nicole Neely.
I think we're all very familiar with the horror stories about what's taking place in America's schools these days. You can't go more than a few minutes watching TV without hearing some latest outrage. Parents around the country are absolutely furious about the state of our country's education system, and with good reason. They're mad that children are being taught to view themselves and others first and foremost through the lens of immutable characteristics of race and gender, and to treat each other accordingly, and that they are being treated accordingly. Reading books that say that whiteness is a deal with the devil, or being taught about the gender unicorn and ask their pronouns in elementary school. They're mad about the elimination of gifted and talented programs in the name of equity. In the state of Oregon, they have something called graduation equity, where you can actually receive a high school diploma now without being able to read, write, or do math. I mean, you have just devalued a whole state's high school diploma in a heartbeat in the name of equity. They're mad that districts are spending finite budget dollars and bringing in diversity consultants that sow division and hatred rather than focusing on learning loss and low proficiency rates as is. They're mad that schools are facilitating gender transitions and hiding it from families. I just talked to a family in upstate New York a few days ago about this, maintaining two separate sets of records, totally destroying that relationship between a parent and a child. And they're mad that when they try and raise these issues with their school, they are mocked by the media and they are mocked by elected officials, all the way from the White House to the schoolhouse. These concerns are dismissed and they feel unheard. It's no wonder parents are upset. But I'm not here to tell sob stories. I actually am coming here with a little bit of good news. The cavalry is coming. We saw this last night, and we are seeing this around the country. Parents Defending Education speaks to parents every single day around the country. We work with, at this point, about 200 parent groups across the country that have sprung up just in the past 2 years to address what is going on in America's schools, the quality of education. Not just school choice, not masks or COVID, just this political indoctrination in schools. People are mad, and they are awoke. And I think what's exciting is this is a really unusual group of people that have come out. This is not just a bunch of conservatives. These are people, probably 10 or 15% of the people we hear from are people who say, I'm a lifelong Democrat, but I don't like this. We hear from teachers. We hear from school administrators. We hear from first-generation Americans who are generally apolitical, but they don't want their child to be taught that getting the right answer in math class is racist. They want their child to learn calculus so they can apply to MIT and make a better life for themselves. And so, we have this amazing opportunity to bring a new generation of people and new Americans to the cause of freedom. And so, although it seems dark, I am very optimistic that together we can make a change and we can reclaim our children's education because this issue is not going away. Thank you.
This is great. Thank you so much. I wanted to kick it off with a question, and I'll turn to Ranking Member Virginia Foxx from North Carolina, who is our Republican leader on the Education and Workforce Committee. We actually passed the K-12 reauthorization that required by law schools have parental engagement policies, and you and I have highlighted this in a recent op-ed. If you could talk more about that, about why we believe that's important and how important it is to hold the department accountable to make sure parents are involved.
Well, we have known for centuries that parental involvement and good principals make a good school. And so you're right. Republicans have focused on this for a long, long time. We've focused on parental choice. We've focused on parental involvement. And that's what we want everywhere. We want the schools to be responsible to the parents and to the children. And so Republicans we really are the party of education. We always have been. We believe in promoting what education is correct for you, whether you're in elementary school, secondary school, or we know now that you have to go beyond high school in order to get the skills that you need. And so we know that, and we have pushed this for years. Unfortunately, the teachers' unions and the Democrats have taken control of the schools, and I agree with what all of you have said. The parents have awakened, and they're taking control. I've said this year, the best thing that came out of COVID was the exposure of the total incompetence of our education systems at both the elementary and secondary level and in post-secondary education. And people want better. They're paying well for it.
Just to maybe turn to some of our Loudoun County parents here, you talked about your experience, Brandon. What was it like just seeing the community and the parents come forward? Because it caught like wildfire. We obviously saw the proof last night.
Yeah, I mean, also from the the curtain was pulled back, exactly like you said. I mean, look, we brought my 9-year-old up here. I think, what did you say, Duke, when you said, what was the worst part about online schooling with Grant?
He would always get into the call and mess up my keyboard.
Yeah. So tell me, at the time last year, it's a 3rd grader, right? And he's a 4th grader now, but you have a 2.5-year-old who just wants to hang out with his brother. I have a 6-year-old who's in kindergarten at the time who they're asking her to go to a URL address. And she's like, what's a URL address, right? And how do I use a keyboard? Like, I know how to use an iPhone because I play games on them, but I don't know how to search the internet. And so, the curtain was pulled back on the education system and the curriculum. And what happened was you have parents like myself and everyone else saying, hey, you know what? I don't actually agree with what is being taught. I don't actually agree with this, these books that my kids are coming home with. My daughter came home with a transgender book as a kindergartner. And, look, I'm all for equality with everyone, but at 6 years old, that is not curriculum that I personally want to see coming home. And, I think parents woke up. I think a movement was started. And the most amazing thing about last night is parents came out in ranks to say, Virginia, this is no longer, and look, you had 2 candidates. You had a candidate, Glenn Youngkin, who said empowering parents, and then you had Terry McAuliffe, who's, getting supported by union leaders, and those union leaders aren't even speaking for the children. And so who do you think you're going to gravitate towards if you're not hard left or hard right? And we saw that, and it's, again, the wave, and I will stay on this line. Parents matter, and this is creating a playbook for the country.
Absolutely. Leader McCarthy.
Oh, well, thank you. So, Brandon, thank you for your message. I've watched you on TV. Thank you for engaging. And you just said something very powerful. And what I love to be sitting right here, because I think parents and children should both be at the table.
And this is my son, Duke.
Duke, you're the man.
This is
High five. Well, as I watched the frustration at the school board meetings and listen to Democrats think, instead of sit back and say, what can we do to solve this problem? How can we bring you in? Let's show what we're being taught. Let's work together as one. They take an attorney general to try to come in and intimidate people to say, shut up, sit down, we know what's best. That's never the American way. And it's not from a party point of view or others, but one thing we've worked on, we've got some brilliant minds here around this table that have worked a great deal in education in many different forms, and they've always engaged the students, the parents, but everybody a part of it. We're going to be crafting a Parents' Bill of Rights. So parents do have a say in what goes on. I mean, it's fundamental. I've watched it through my whole life and the difference it makes. And the one thing we've always realized, education is the great equalizer. Everybody should have opportunity. And what's interesting is, it doesn't matter the color of your skin, your wealth, or anything else. Once you have a child, it's no longer about yourself. It's what opportunity your children will have. You'll sacrifice your own life for this child. And if there was anything that should be a wake-up call to America last night, don't get in the way of parents and their children. Engage them together, and and the country could be so much stronger. So thank you for your help, and I appreciate everybody coming and being a part of this, especially Duke.
He's participating, he's doing great. Let's also hear from the other parents. I know Brandon talked about sort of the experience seeing this issue catch like wildfire, but I'm curious what your feedback is.
Well, I live in Arlington County, and the parent response was quieter. It had a different feel than Loudoun County and Fairfax County, and it didn't make the news as a result, but I think it's equally important. The parents there founded an organization, Arlington Parents for Education, and they quietly and consistently fought to turn the school board's attention to the needs of students and to the requests of parents to ensure that their children were learning. In spring of 2020, when some schools pivoted to remote learning, Arlington County, for equity purposes, sent a message to parents like me of third graders saying no more than 30 minutes of math and 30 minutes of reading a day for equity purposes. And no direct instruction was provided for the entire spring. And this, my middle schooler was essentially abandoned as well. No direct instruction, just hard to find, complicated online systems to navigate to try to find weekly assignments. No, my third grader in Arlington County had never received grades, again, for equity purposes. They had switched to this, I think, standard-based learning or standard-based grading or something like this. So she's now a fifth grader in a little private school receiving grades for the first time, which was a shock to the system, but she's loving it because she knows I'm loving it too. I have a stack of papers that have come home in the first quarter that I never would have gotten in Arlington County. But I'm thankful for these parents who, again, are doing what's best for their children, maybe trying different educational options like I'm doing this year, but also staying in the fight in our county, going to the school board, meeting with school board members, meeting with county executives, and saying, look at what you're doing. You are abandoning our children. And when you kept schools closed for over a year, Arlington County, I think, was actually worse than Loudoun and Fairfax, again, just doesn't get the media attention. The standards of learning tests, the state's assessments showed what happened. They plummeted, absolutely plummeted. Math went down significantly. Reading went down quite a bit, but you know what? Reading would have gone down more if the state hadn't just lowered the standards. The state in 2020 met and decided, well, instead of having to get 25 out of 40 to pass, third graders have to get 21 questions right out of 40. They didn't tell parents. They didn't share this information. They quietly lowered that standard, and then when reading scores went down but didn't plummet as much as math, they didn't inform parents of that, maybe not even school leaders. So parents might be hustling to get a tutor for their child for math when they saw their assessment scores, but not know that their child also needs a reading tutor too. So I'm thankful for the parents who go to the school board meetings. I'm thankful for the raucousness of that experience and the attention that it gets. I'm also thankful for the quiet, deliberate groups that are really trying to turn those school boards' attention to the academic needs of the kids in their community.
Great. Burgess, what are you hearing from your constituents on the education issue?
Very good. First of all, Utah has been a state that's always been very, very much in education. So this is a topic that's been very important for us. I want to pivot for a quick second and just say something that I think is important. This whole thing of equity, I want you guys to just keep in mind, it's always lower expectation for black people. It's as racist as you can get. It's what I grew up in when I was in the 60s. My degree was biology because my dad was a college professor and I would go to the laboratory, and that was my passion. But it was also something that it was not thought that we can do in those days. Blacks were not supposed to be that intelligent to do something like that. I remember being told as I was leaving high school from a teacher that I would not succeed. And the next 4 years, I lived in the library to prove that person wrong. This is the most insidious thing we can do is to start lowering expectations for anybody, any kid, based on their race, based on their color. And that's what we see on the left. Equity is always, in their mind, lowering expectations and bringing everybody else down to that lower expectation. So education should be one in which we see the best in every individual, every child. And I tell you, I love the fact that parents are now doing what we've always done. We've always sacrificed anything so the next generation can stand on our shoulders, and that's what's happening today. It's why I'm so excited about our country. That's why I've always been an eternal optimist. I knew this day would come when we'll start coming together as people across the board, no matter what the political persuasion would be. We just had to find that right common denominator. They took away our flag, they take away our God, they take away those sports, but what they can't take away is what we the people really, as a people, always have been drawn to. That's our kids. So we now have something that's brought us together again, and I'm excited about this. And by the way, ignorant and free can never be. That was Thomas Jefferson. Our country's built on freedom based on education and people being engaged. So we're back in the saddle again, and I'm excited about winning this deal for sure.
Great. Julia, how about your constituents from Louisiana on this issue?
Well, I have a lot of mom friends, and so I think if the pandemic, if we can find the silver lining in the pandemic, I think it brought to light the curriculum that our children are being taught. And I heard from my mom friends, and they said, this is the first time I'm truly seeing what my children are being taught day in and day out. And then, therefore, they had a vested interest moving forward to have a say in exactly what that curriculum was going to be moving forward. But this was really the first time that parents had the opportunity to sit down with their children and help with the learning process. I mean, we've been involved in homework, but it was on us from 8 to 3 every day, moms especially. And so I think that the pandemic brought that to light and encouraged parents to speak out and be more vocal about the curriculum. Being in higher ed, teaching communication courses to freshmen, I was astounded at how unprepared the freshmen were coming out of the high schools in my area. And I think this one-size-fits-all package that's trying to be pushed down from the federal government does not work. And you can see that in my area especially. I think a rural area is very different from a metropolitan area in California. We have different needs specific to our area. And so I think that's why it's so important for us to have agency and to have choice over what is really going to encourage a child in a rural area such as mine to continue going on to that trade school or that community college, not necessarily choosing the path to higher ed. So those are some things that we've been working through in my district that I've been seeing on the front lines back home. Thank you.
Great. Nicole, do you have any other comments in terms of what you're hearing from parents?
Yeah, I love that you mentioned agency, and thank you so much for introducing a Parent Bill of Rights. One thing that we have heard that has come up, initially it came up in Fairfax County, but we're hearing it from around the country, is the use of intrusive surveys, very deeply personal surveys. We got the tip about Panorama Education and the Attorney General's son-in-law being involved in that. People don't know what their children are being asked or how that information will be used and weaponized against them and their families in the future. People don't know, they feel deeply disenfranchised by this, and the ability to opt out is often hidden from them. I reached out to Arlington County about my children and said, I don't want my children surveyed by Panorama. And it took them days to respond to me because they don't want you to opt out. I shouldn't have to beg the government to not survey my children for deeply personal information. And so to flip the script and to put that power back in the hands of parents, I think is going to be a game changer. So thank you for standing up.
I think Julia hit a very good point. With the pandemic and with schools going to Zoom, parents got to know for the first time what is happening in these classrooms. You wouldn't think it was happening, but even to the school, your own school, you think that this is not happening here, but it really was a wake-up call. And I think it's brought a great deal amount of attention to people that they want to engage more.
And the important aspect that's in this far-left reconciliation package is this is just an expansion of the federal government Biden administration top-down, not just to K through 12, but for pre-K. And it crushes community-based, faith-based, family-based pre-K and nursery school programs. That would not work in a rural district like mine, similar to rural Louisiana, even though we're in rural northern New York.
And I'm actually in rural California. So it's the tough part, but you're right about the legislation. It empowers to make it more national and one size fits all of what we're arguing against. Let the parents in every area different have a say. And I love the accountability that you're talking about. Why do we lower the standards instead of telling the parents where we are? Let's be honest where we are and let's improve.
And we know, again, from research, that children will perform up to what is expected of them. We have known that again for years. You set low expectations, that's what you will get. You set high expectations, you will get that. So it really is incumbent on the schools to set high expectations. I too grew up very, very poor in a rural area in North Carolina, and nobody ever expected me to graduate high school, let alone college. But there were high expectations for me because some teachers saw some talent and some potential. And so I lived up to those. If you set low expectations, as Burgess has said, that's what you will get. And we know that.
I actually just want to say, regarding expectations, the phone, the internet, all of Facebook has made everything so global. And our education system, this isn't just a U.S. equation, this is a world equation. And the dumbing down of our education and not pushing our youth and our high schoolers to be the best. I've ridden in cars with people, and you have people from other countries, and they say, your guys' system, I came from where, you had to perform at the top level at all times. And so the unfortunate thing is we shouldn't be afraid to fail. And I think from the top down in leadership, from national to state to local, I think people are afraid to say, sorry, we didn't do something right, or we failed. And because we've been dumbing everything down that failure isn't an option, but we don't mean it as in failure that we're not going to win a great battle. It is, look, we learn from our failures and we get stronger, but if we're telling our kids that an F is a 60, then a 50, then a 40, then a 30, then other countries who are looking at the U.S. as their opportunity to get better education, at least on university levels, and bring that back to raise their economies, if we're not willing to set the stage and, my battle cry, raise the bar, right? If we're not willing to raise the bar on our education and our standards, then, there are countries who are going to surpass us very quickly, and we're going to lose that, upper hand.
Absolutely. Duke, can I ask you what your favorite subject is? Math. That is great to hear. Yes, that does speak volumes. Well, thank you for being here, Duke. Thank you for speaking up to your school board in your community, like your dad told us. Thank you to all of our guests. We can now open it up to questions from the press. Yes.
Hi, I'm Alex Nestor. I write on education for the Washington Free Beacon. You all mentioned the race in Virginia last night. Parents clearly are taking a stand against all of these types of things that are happening in schools. Do you think Democrats are going to change the message on what they're pushing in this bill at the Education Department and now at the Justice Department? Are they going to keep trying to push this down parents' throats, or are they going to get the message from last night's election? Thank you.
As we saw in the House and the Senate Judiciary Oversight hearings, I do not think they will be walking this back. We are seeing them double down. We have not seen the Department of Justice walk it back. I'm so grateful for the House Republicans that have started to call for, why are you not doing this? What are the Attorney General's offices around the country doing? But I don't see that strategy changing at all, and I think it's to their detriment.
I actually disagree. I think everything now has been so much of a 50-50 politically that the differential in vote, that the data is going to say it all, right? I mean, everything is so data-driven now that people are going to see that if I can take 2 or 3% by focusing, I think, look at the campaigns in the final week, right? McAuliffe put his foot in his mouth with parents don't matter. That just became a battle cry for everyone who said, wait a minute, time for me to pay better attention. And so, if you can't pivot, you're not going to win. And I think people are actually going to look at the data and say this is what can help sway that differential, which is what's leading these elections to the final to the finish line.
I would hope the other thing that comes out of the Virginia election is just the clear optics that McAuliffe had Randy Weingarten, the head of the American Federation for Teachers Union, at his final rally, and then he lost. unions are so powerful. They have so much money. They have such an entrenched power system, largely, almost exclusively with Democratic politicians. That very clear evidence that power was surpassed by the power of parents who want something very different has to sink in with some Democrats. Maybe not at the national level, where people have staked out their territory in this current reconciliation battle. But I do hope that will very much happen at the state and at the local level. Unions should not have the power that they've had before. It's clear that parents don't want that, and parents are going to vote people out who support them.
But Ginny, so the thing is, unions have money and position, but the parents have the votes. And that's the difference.
That's what
There's
was
the
shown.
numbers game, and the parents have the votes, and that's exactly that. Like, the votes are what matters. It doesn't matter who has the most in their bank account. It matters who's going to vote.
I was going to make a difference between Democratic voters and Democrat elected official. Democrat voters are ripe for these candidates that run on common sense. I win not just Republican voters in my district, but independents and Democrats. And you saw even in a state like New York, the teachers' unions, people are waking up. Parents of all political parties are waking up that the union leaders do not have the kids' best interest in mind. And whether it's parents, teachers, or students speaking out, it's going to be of all political ideologies. But you know who's not listening? Nancy Pelosi's not listening. House Democrats are not listening. They are going to continue to try to desperately jam through this bad reconciliation package, and the American people are going to speak loudly and clearly that they don't support it.
I think we're going to have the worst of both worlds in this situation. I think the Democrats are going to be like Terry McAuliffe. They're going to say, no, there's no CRT in the schools. They're going to try to speak louder and overcome what people are doing, and they're going to hide it. They're going to go deeper and deeper. And I agree with Congresswoman Stefanik that they are not going to change here because they're too deep into it. But they're going to try to fool the American people again, and it's going to be vigilance on the part of the parents to make sure it's not happening.
I think your best bet is, what did we hear from them this morning? The thing we heard from them this morning is like they have to double down. And it's not like they didn't have the warning before the election. They heard it in the polls. They heard it in the crowds coming to the board meetings. And every chance they had an opportunity to change course, they doubled down. They brought the Attorney General in. And then when it found out his whole opinion was based upon one letter, and then they rescind the letter and say, we're sorry, that wasn't it, the Attorney General didn't back away. So every indication they've had so far, they have not. They doubled back down. So time will tell, but the earliest time right now, it's kind of sad they're being tone deaf.
Can I just add something again? I mentioned the experience of my race because I think it's important that we all understand that no matter what the culture is or the race is, anyone who digs deeply into education, faith, family, and free market will win. They will be part of the middle class. I've seen my community over the last 50 years go into a tailspin. I've been talking about choice forever. What I'm excited about now is we've had good people across our country who've been very sympathetic to this cause, but they've also had options. They didn't have to worry about their kids not being educated, or they had the right zip code. So there was sympathy, but everybody just moved on. We now have empathy, where parents, mothers are seeing my kid now. I now understand what it is not to have a choice, or to have a curriculum that is teaching how to be a failure, something that we've been dealing for quite a while. So the empathy piece that I see happening, which is what we're good at as a nation, is what's going to change the trajectory. And we don't lose that. Once we get it, once we understand it, once it's a heartfelt thing, we're all in. So I think what they're seeing now is, you're right, the left will not change their ways. They'll just try to be more stealth, because that's who they are. They're telling us CRT is not around. We all know they're teaching our 6-year-old kids that they're evil if they're born white. That kind of stuff is crazy, but they have no shame. So we have to realize it's not going to go away. We have to be diligent. We have to recognize that we're all in this together. It doesn't matter what side of the aisle we're on. Our kids are important to us, and we need to be all in to make sure that that's being transparent, and that the parents have a say at the agenda and the curriculums move forward.
Next question. Go ahead.
You're good. Hi, I'm Kendall Teets. I work for the Daily Caller News Foundation, and I just wanted to hear a little bit more about what you were saying about how Democrats are really going to be doubling down because they're so entrenched in this ideology. What do you see happening with critical race theory, just because that is really kind of the most salient issue? What do you say to those people who say, critical race theory is not in schools? Like, what do you see in your districts, or, where your children attend schools? Like, what happens next when people just continue to deny that that's not in schools?
Strictly speaking, critical race theory is not being taught in schools because we're not making children read Richard Delgado and Kimberly Crenshaw. That's an Eighth Amendment violation. We don't want to do that. But what we do see is we see the implementation of this pedagogy. We see people being defined and treated by immutable characteristics, by race, by gender. And that is unacceptable. And I don't care what you call it. You can call it magical unicorn theory. It's unconstitutional and it's immoral. And so, yes, I think you guys are right. We're going to keep changing the terms. Right now, CRT is now a toxic term, and so now it's culturally responsive, or there's social emotional learning, right? The terms keep shifting. But again, the price of liberty is eternal vigilance. People are paying attention now. I mean, people are obsessively watching what their kids are learning, asking, filing public records requests to get access to curriculum. And when the schools say, no, you can't see it, alarm bells go off. We have all these, my coworker calls them Nancy Drews. I mean, people are paying attention now, and they're not going away. And
they're
so,
required by law, we pointed out. The Department of Education, in our K through 12 bill, they're required by law to share curriculum with parents and have parental engagement policy. Virginia.
Well, I was just going to say, what we have to do is educate parents to know they have that right and that they can get it. And that's why when we do the Parental Bill of Rights, we want to emphasize that to parents. We want to make sure that the school boards follow through. We've had sleepy school board elections in the past. A lot of people haven't paid attention. That is not going to happen in the future. And I've told parents in my district, you start paying close attention to what's happening with the school boards. If they deny you the opportunity to have a charter school, then you get out and you elect school board members who are going to support charter schools. And I do think we have gotten the parents awake now, and we're going to do everything, the Republicans are going to do everything we can to help the parents be educated along with the children, because the children need to, they're the ones who come home and tell you what's in what they're being taught every day. And if we get the Parental Bill of Rights and we emphasize this, the awareness on the part of parents, they do want the best for their children. I don't care what race or you are, you want the best for your children. And so we're going to push that on and on and on. This is not going away.
I actually want to say, I agree with Nicole. There is no CRT class, but what I've heard from so many teachers within my county is that it's buried within their training. And so you may have a equity training, or you may have a, fringe training, or call it whatever you want. All right, you make up the term of the day, just as parents were terrorists last week and now we're whatever you want to call us. But, it is just buried within the training where they're saying, look, you need to make sure one group is favored versus the other. Or, for my 6-year-old daughter, that because you're white, you should be pandering towards another. No, it should be we're all created equal. And if we want to talk about cultural differences, let's highlight all the great things about those cultural differences. But what I've seen, at least, and I get people who message me on all different media platforms, and they're saying it's buried within the trainings of the teachers, masked as something else.
I would say that parents need to pay attention to what's going on at the school board level. They also need to pay attention on what's going on at the state level. And so that's where I think McAuliffe tripped up when he kept saying, oh, it's not in Virginia schools, when you can go to the state Department of Education and there's websites and trainings and webinars dedicated to this CRT, or whatever you want to call it, issue. And there's an expectation that the state sets the policy and the school boards have to implement that. That's an even starker expectation with the state transgender policy for the state of Virginia. That was put into law. They drafted a 27-page model policy at the state level and then passed a law requiring all, I think it's 133 school districts or divisions in Virginia to implement it. So as much as Loudoun County got attention for for their conversations around the transgender policy, every single school district in Virginia, by law, state law, has to implement the state-drafted transgender policy. It's not just in Loudoun, it's not just in Fairfax. This school year, every single school district has to implement it. So I think that parents need to pay attention to what's going on in their classrooms, at the school district. And it's a lot on parents, but they also need to pay attention to what's going on at the state level and what's mandated down. I've received tearful phone calls from Virginia school board members saying, look, our district lawyer is telling us that our district will lose insurance and that we will be sued if we don't implement the transgender policy. And so that's the advice that the school boards are being given, and they feel very much pressured to then do what the state wants. So what support are we providing to school board members who want to push back on the state? That's the other issue I think we need to pay attention to.
Let me just say real quickly, I think what we have to remember, the mission statement, the three most powerful words in the history of mankind are "we the people." And what that really says to me is really, I mean, we're going to do our job best we can to make sure we're representing the people and giving parents options. But it's going to be truly down at that lower level. It's at, when I say lower level, it's at that grassroots where parents are going up to the school boards, doing what you guys are doing right now. It's nothing more powerful than that. This is the new civil rights, period. And whether it's white kids, black kids, it doesn't matter what the zip code is, we will be impacting our future based on how all kids are raised to be responsible citizens of our country, to be proud of who we are, to say I can make a difference just by standing and saying a word or two. And once we get back to that, across the board, our entire nation continues to rise. So I'm excited about the fact that we the people, again, are waking up. So the solutions will not, well, obviously 2022, let's make sure Republicans are running in a big, big way, that we're putting together policies that we will make sure help. But it starts off with parents like yourself. And I want to thank you guys for truly stepping to the plate, because this is what it's all about, for sure.
That is a great theme to end on. We the people, not we the government. Thank you to Leader McCarthy for hosting these wonderful roundtables to focus on policies, focus on the issues that matter to the American people. Thank you so much to our guests and for sharing your viewpoints. Thank you for standing up for our kids. Thank you to Duke for being here on the spot. You did great. And we really appreciate the media for your questions, and we're going to continue to exposing the far left policies that are in the reconciliation package. Thank you very much.